You're right, everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm doing a video. It's something I've been asked for a few times, to be fair. It's going to be a video about the views, the custom views that I use in Football Manager 22, how to install them, how to use them properly, how I use them in game, and how they might be useful for you in your own save games. So I'll take you through a few different things. There are a couple of steps on a couple of them that you do need to do for them to work properly, so I'll take you through that. But let's go through them and I'll show you how I use them in game. Firstly, to use this view, you'll go onto the Steam Workshop, which is down below. You can either subscribe to everything that's in this pack, or you can subscribe to individual parts. When you subscribe to them on the workshop, they will go into your FM22 views folder. You can then go into import view. You'll find the views here, import it into the game, and then you find it in your custom view, or you might need to manage the view and then import it that way. But once you've got it, you've got them here. This is the way that you do it on all of these, except for my scouting view and my shortlist view. And I'll show you how to do that properly when we get to them. But that's how you get them into the game. That's how you set them up. Let's take you through the actual view, shall we? So it is worth noting that to get this bigger view, I am using a 1440p monitor, but I am playing at 120% zoom. So it is almost the same as 1080p. The big thing is I'm using the icons only on the side panel. So to get this, you can go into your preferences and you can go into advanced, you can go into your interface, and then there is sidebar icons only. So you use that, it brings up the little icons here, it gives you more screen real estate and gives you more room to view these. Like I say, this is on a 1440p monitor. You might notice a little bit squished up if you're playing on a 1080p, but you can always just resize a couple of these columns and make it fit onto the screen as, you know, to your desire. Or maybe even remove one or two of these things. Maybe you don't need the age and nationality in this screen. So to start, the most often seen and the most often requested is just the regular squad view screen. So it's just an expanded version of the basic view with a load of information that I find really useful when I'm building my team and keeping an eye on how my teams run. For example, nationality, it's just nice to see what kind of nationalities are in the team, basically. But player age is so I can keep a quick eye on the depth of certain positions and the age of them. So you can see from here, Joe Lewis, Andy Considine, and Declan Gallagher, like the back line, I've got some older players there. So I want to make sure I've got some younger players like Jesper Moon, Calvin Ramsey, Mason Hancock coming through, getting some game time and being blooded, and for them to be ready to step into the first team when needed. Position, we all like to see position, preferred foot, same thing. Some people like having a left footer and a right footer in defense. I'm not as anal on that, but it's nice to see if I want an inside forward on the right hand side that I want someone with a left foot, and vice versa and all that kind of stuff. We've got their morale, obviously, morale manager, famously. We want to keep everyone happy, and the personality as well. I always like to keep positive personalities in the dressing room, and I'll take you through a search filter that I've got later for that as well. But it's always nice to keep an eye on the personalities, making sure that I've got some leaders in the starting 11 at least. Last 5 games, obviously that discounts any reserve games or under 18s games that your first teams might have played and could be skewing their performance numbers. Just helps me keep an eye on their recent form, and if someone's in flying form, I'm going to try and keep them in the team for as long as I can. And then we've just got your standard stats for matches. So you get your appearances, goals, XG, and assists, as well as the yearly average rating, so average rating over the season. The reason I've got XG in there is because I like to see which players are getting good chances and who's being clinical. So the way I see it, if a player's got more goals than their XG, they're a clinical finisher. If they've got less goals than their XG, they're a wasteful finisher. So obviously you want your strikers to be good finishers and you don't want them to be wasteful. We've then got the playing time pathways. So I've got their agreed playing time and their actual playing time. It's just a good idea to keep an eye on this to stop people from kicking off and not playing too much. Or like sometimes you might have a player who's expecting to only be in cup games. So you can, like the cup keeper here for Gunnarsson, so you can leave him out for a few games without the worry that he's going to be, you know, getting too upset about the lack of first team opportunities. And also you don't want anyone who's an important player sat on the bench all the time. So it's just a good way to keep an eye on what you've promised them and what they're actually playing. I've then got their transfer value, wages, and expiry date. Just again, so I can have a quick look over who's a high earner. If one of my highest earners, so Bobby Adekanye, or we've got Reece Devine, who are 2 of our higher earners, if they're sitting on the bench a lot, that's wasted resources. I want to make sure they're playing, and if they're playing well, And if they're not playing well, they're earning a lot of money, maybe it's a player that we need to look to move on. Expiry date, obviously, so I can see if and when people need new contracts. Then move on to the assistant reports, which have current ability and potential ability, just so I can see at a glance the kind of quality of players and where we might be lacking in squad depth. Now, as I always say on stream, never take the star rating as gospel. Like, it's a good barometer as to who may be a slightly better player than another in a position. And it's also a good kind of barometer as to whether a player's got a lot of room to grow in terms of their potential star attributes. But never use it as, well, I've picked all my 3.5-star players, so that's my best team. Certain players have different attribute spreads, more experience, better mental attributes. There's a lot of things that roll into player performance. And just to start, you can't really judge players just on their star ratings. But it's a nice, quick way of keeping an eye on my players. And if we're playing a cup game, I want to chuck a few youngsters on the bench. I can jump to my under-18s team, and I can see that I've got a few players who've got a decent amount of potential. Maybe I stick them on the bench. Maybe they get a starting spot in a cup game. But it's just a nice, quick reference point for my players' ability and potential. And finally, I've got the player fitness. So we've got the condition, sharpness, match load, fatigue, and overall risk. Now, last year they brought in the new kind of fitness, well, the condition heart rather than the fitness percentage. And this rolls a lot of things into one thing. But with the condition, if a player's not got a full green heart, they're not starting the game unless it is absolute dire straits. For me, they're always going to get rested or rotated. Sharpness, it's good to keep an eye on your players that are match fit so you can kind of rotate them in and out, keep them on a level. And if they aren't getting game time, maybe make them available for a youth team or a reserve team or a B team if you've got one of those. The match load, again, if someone's got a heavy match load and they're consistently playing like every 3 or 4 days, I'm probably going to look to bring them out until I can get their match load to a medium. It just helps reduce injury risks and fatigue in game. Speaking of fatigue, I've got the fatigue column here as well. So anyone who's showing fatigue and has a heavy match load, unless it is unavoidable, they're coming out of the next game, at least the next game. So I want to get the fatigue lower. I want to get the match load lower to keep everyone fit, reduce little niggling injuries and maybe even bigger injuries, but also keep players fit for the full 90 minutes of the match. You're always going to get a better chance of winning a game that way. And speaking of injuries, we've got the overall injury risk. So anyone's got a very high injury risk, who's playing a lot of football, got a lot of fatigue, you better believe they're getting rested for a few games. Or maybe I'll take them out of training for a day or two, or give them a lighter training routine. That's just the way that I manage my squad. It's the way that I try and keep injuries low. And especially this year, it seems like injuries are back in a big way. So I use this kind of every game, and it's probably the most important part of this view. So next up, the view that you'll be using just before you go into a match or if you're doing your tactics is my pre-game view. Again, it's kind of like a condensed version of the squad view. So you've got all the players' positions where they're playing, their ability in the role, as my assistant manager says, whether you're using any personal player instructions or just general player instructions there. I tend to just kind of do them on the fly, but yeah, you'll be able to change between them there if you want to. Obviously, player name, all the kind of little bits of information that you need. But the big ones in this one are your tactical familiarity. So you can see how familiar your players are at playing that role in this system, which is when you look at someone like Conor McLennan, he's really used to playing as an attacking winger in this formation. When you look at Scott Brown coming into this, he's used to the system, but he's not used to the role. He's more used to playing as an anchorman. So if you move him to the anchorman role, see Scott Brown moves down there, he knows the anchorman role because I'm training him as an anchorman. So you can always train the players in the roles that they're going to be playing. It will increase their tactical familiarity. Once they've got used to the system, they will know their role better. And obviously, the better that everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing, the better you're probably going to perform. You've then got the appearances, goals, assists, just kind of like standard, standard stats. Last 5 games, so you can make sure that the players that you're picking are in decent form. And then again, I've got the fatigue, the sharpness, the condition, the match load, and the injury risk here, just as a secondary, making sure that I haven't picked anyone that is going to collapse halfway through a game. But yeah, basically a slimmed down version of the squad view. I then have my schedule view, which is Honestly, not that much different from the default, but it's in there. Obviously, your opponent, whether you're on TV, the venue, whether we win or lose, the result, the competition. But I also like to keep an eye on the formation that I'm playing and the opponent's formation. So if ever I change a formation or go into a game just trying something different, or I notice a string of results against a certain formation that I need to kind of have a deeper look in, I can keep an eye on it in here. And then I've just got my goal scorers. Like, there's nothing too in-depth on this one, but it's a nice view, fills it out a little bit, and yeah, makes everything look nice. So next, I have my club staff view. I'm just on my coaching staff, just to give you an idea. I have, obviously, it's got the senior squad, or whether they're a youth squad, if you look at your entire coaching staff or entire staff list. Then we've got their job, any secondary jobs they might have. Now, I tend to not use secondary jobs, but it's nice to keep an eye on them if people are using them. Their nationality and their age. Now, I do like to keep an eye on these, not only for age, as in whether people are going to need to be replaced fairly soon if somebody is approaching retirement age, but also nationality. A lot of the time, you know, language could, I'm not too sure whether it does make a difference, but, you know, I like to think that maybe it does. If your coaches can talk to your players, they're going to get their ideas over better. So I try and make sure that people can speak English. If I'm at an English club, or if they speak the language of the nation that I'm managing in, just keeps an eye on it. Also, when you're looking at your scouting staff, it's really important to keep an eye on their nationalities, because obviously if they're from different countries, they're going to go know different players. That can increase your scouting knowledge as well. Again, personality. I like to have positive personalities around the club, same as in the playing staff. I want it in my coaching staff. Then I've got the expiry date and the wage, again, just so I can see who needs a contract or whose contracts might be coming up, who I might be looking to replace. And then what I consider the most important overall attributes for staff. So I've got their determination, the level of discipline, and their motivation. If you're not aware, those are three very important attributes for coaching. If they've got high attributes in those and decent attributes in the other areas that they coach, the chances of you getting a higher star rating for your coaching is much higher. So the old DDM, determination, discipline, motivation. Then I've got the judging player potential and ability. That's obviously important for my assistant manager or whichever coaching staff you might have that gives you player reports. I've then got the working with youngsters attribute as well, because I tend to always want to try and bring through young players and have them coaching in the first team. So having a decent amount of coaches that have good working with youngster ratings, I always try and keep that. As you can see here, not everyone is great with youngsters, but I have some who are very good with youngsters. So there's a nice balance there. Ideally in the future, everyone will be good with youngsters, and then we can just kind of have a catch-all training session with everyone in it. I've then got a few other things that I like to keep an eye on. So their coaching style, their player mentality, their playing style, and their tactical style as well. They are a little fiddly to resize and get working and actually viewable on the screen, but I have been, there we go. I've been fighting with these a lot, but if you download it and install it, you should have just the regular view. There we go. It's there enough. But these are just the things that I like to keep an eye on. There we go. Just realized it was broken again. Obviously, if I'm delegating my coaching, I can give it to someone who suits the kind of football we're playing. So someone like Gavin Levy, who does technical, balanced, direct gegenpress could work. At the minute, I do have it set to my assistant manager, Alan Russell, who plays an attacking, adventurous passing style. Works for me. So we're more often than not going to have the right kind of coaching, the right kind of training sessions that will get the most out of my players. I do tweak my training, but that's a whole other video. So on to one of the other views that is most often asked for. It's my player search view. One of the things people ask is, how do you have everything so compact? Now, when you first come into the game, it's going to look like this. Everything's going to have thick horizontal lines, not a lot of information, and it's all just, for me, I'm not a big fan of this. Now, the way to install this view and have the nice compact view is you do it this way. So you go into here, you first of all hit general info, and that'll compact all the lines up. And then obviously you can always just make your own or whatever. But then what I do is import my scouting view, and then that keeps the nice narrow lines horizontally. Keeps everything nice and compact. I can see more players on my screen. I'm happy with that. If you just import it straight from your overview screen, you will have this view with all these columns, but in the thicker horizontal lines. So make sure you do that before you do this. Now, just to take you through the reasons I've got these here, it's fairly basic stuff. You got obviously the player name, their information, their world reputation, which I really like to use when I'm looking for players who are out of contract. World reputation means that they've probably achieved something in the game, means they're probably a decent player. We then got their current club, their position, my scout's knowledge level. So say if I've got a really good A+ scout report, Stephen Walsh is a good example here, actually. I've got an A+ scout report, but my knowledge level is only 62%. So if I want to get a really, really accurate scout report, I want to make sure that I've got 100% knowledge, that my scouts know him as much as they're going to know him, and I can hopefully not make a mistake in signing a player like that. Then going through the rest of this, you just got your ability and your potential ability. Refer back to what I said previously about stars, but I always find that this is a good barometer as to how much a player can grow. Their loan status, their transfer status, and again, their basic match stats. So if you're looking at a player halfway through a season, or like in the January transfer window, or even at the end of a season, looking for players to pick up, you can see if they've had a good year, you can see their XG, their goals, their, if they're a really risky player with a lot of yellow and red cards, you can see that. But just your standard basic match stats. Then transfer value. Obviously this year we've got the transfer value, kind of the broader transfer values, but it gives you a good idea of how much they're going to cost. If they have a single value, so like that means that they've got a set asking price. So for example, Bunasar, £400,000. That's the money that the club has asked for. They've set as a release fee. Their current wage, their current expiry date, kind of, they speak for themselves. A current asking price, if there is one. And then obviously you get your scouted minimum asking price, and then their minimum wage demands. So this is what my scouts expect them to demand in wages if I'm going to be making a bid for them. And then just some ancillary information like their weight and their height. Obviously, if you're looking for, a big domineering striker, then you want someone who's probably over 6 foot. If you want a quick winger, the likelihood is you're probably going to want someone who's a bit smaller. I more use this for when I want bigger players, big, strong strikers, or big centre-backs, or a physically kind of imposing central midfielder, maybe. Now, I do have a couple more stats-based scouting views, so I'll take you through those right now. I've got my Moneyball attacking. So when I'm trying to look for a player based off stats, and this is probably something I'm going to use a lot in my Aberdeen save, so I'm going to use stats to look for players that are outperforming what they should be doing, and looking for players who are really good value in the transfer market. So for example, in the Moneyball attacking, if I'm looking for a clinical striker, I might look for the amount of goals they've got, and then go off the XG from that. Now, you're only going to get XG from leagues that you are able to scout. So, for example, we've got some information from these players here. Now, I do have a search filter that aids in this as well, but I will take you through that a little bit further down the line. But, like I say, if I'm looking for a clinical striker, I might be looking at this Gairenia guy. Now, he is retiring, he is 37, but I am just using him as an example. So he's had 18 goals from an 8.52 XG. To me, that says he finishes the chances that are put in front of him, and he's a clinical finisher. Now, he's probably playing at a level that means that he is able to outperform it. So he might be playing at a lower level than his ability. But that's an example for me of a striker who, if I get them good chances, they're probably going to finish them. But I'll take you through my scouting and transfer reasonings and the way I go about signings and transfers in another video. But you've got a load of other information on here as well. Obviously, just the standard transfer value and wage, height and weight, but passing percentage, I've got the pass attempts per 90, the pass completion per 90. I always find per 90 attributes, or per 90 stats, sorry, to be the best as a barometer of how good a player is, because obviously they might just be getting sub appearances, or they might be coming off a lot. But if they've got good per 90 stats, generally speaking, they're going to be good at that thing that you're looking at. Key passes per 90. So I've got total chances created and chances created per 90. So again, kind of like in the XG and the goal scoring, if someone's got high chance creation per 90, but not many chances created, maybe they're just not getting a lot of game time, but when they're on the pitch, they are creating chances. Same with assists per 90. If someone's creating a lot of chances per 90, I mean, this the same player again is quite a good example here. So he's creating 0.37. He's creating a good goal scoring chance every 3 games, but he's only got a 0.5 assists per 90. So he might be a good example of someone who, if I put him in front of a better striker, or behind a better striker, I should say, he might create more chances. He might get more assists. So again, for attacking stats, this is the view that I like to use. And then for your finishing, your strikers, obviously, shots percentage, shots per 90, shots on target per 90, minutes per goal. And then, as I said earlier, you get your XG and just general goals. Dribbles and distance covered per 90. I don't use these so much because that is very much system-based. But maybe you've got a player who runs all day or does, 11 dribbles per 90. He's obviously pretty good at taking on a man. So as I have an attacking one, there is obviously a defensive one as well. So this kind of works the same kind of way. You've got the general information there again, height and weight, because obviously, like I was saying earlier, I might want to have bigger, stronger players in defence. Having bigger, stronger players does help at centre-back. But I've also got my my tackles, duels, headers, key tackles, interceptions, and also the passing as well, because I do find that, playing out from the back or having a midfielder that is still proficient on the ball, but is obviously hard in the tackle and good at interceptions is going to help a lot. And I've also got the yellow cards, red cards, man of the match stuff on here as well. So you can use those stats how you wish. Like I say, I will do a more in-depth video on how I use these stats to scout and find players who are good value in the transfer market at a later date. But that's not going to be today, or else this will be a 45-minute video. And finally, on the recruitment side of things, I've got my shortlist view. It's a little bit more of a condensed version of my general scouting view, which just got ability, potential, the knowledge level, how old the scout report is, and then how much they're worth, basically. So from here, I can go in and I can look at their attributes or stats or anything like that. It's just a little bit more of a streamlined view. You install this the same way that you did on the player view. When you come in, you'll have thicker lines. So you go to general info, load in the shortlist view, and then that will have your nice compact view. And obviously you can still go through your positions here. You can select your strikers or whatever. You can hide those. Just go back into list. I don't need as much information when I'm browsing through my shortlist, so I can use this to kind of keep an eye on the players that my scouts are keeping an eye on. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I do have a couple of custom filters available that will be in the overall kind of FM22 download pack on the Steam Workshop. So here's how you use those. If you load up your player view, so you can do this either through the Moneyball views, or you can just do it through the standard scouting view, whichever you prefer. I tend to use this for the Moneyball views, just so I can kind of minimize the amount of stats that I'm looking at for players that I'd never really be interested in. But I do have these. So first of all, preferred personalities. Now this is a list of all of pretty much the best personalities for players in the game. Let's see if I can show you all these. There we go. So, professional perfectionist, model professional, model citizen, leader, born leader, determined, resilient, iron-willed, charismatic leader, driven, spirited, ambitious, very ambitious, fairly ambitious, fairly professional, and fairly determined. So these are all the most beneficial personalities in the game. Now, this does come with a caveat. You do need to know their personalities for this to find them. So if you don't know a player's personality, so if you go into a scouting screen and it says player personality unknown, they aren't going to show up. But I use this as a way to find really good young players with preferential personalities. So for example, I'm looking for players under 17 with good personalities. These are maybe going to have a chance of becoming good players with good mentalities in the future. So I can scout these, maybe pick them up. But also, if you're looking for a leader in the middle of the park, you can go for someone who's in the peak of their powers, maybe with a determination in there as well. And you can probably gamble that these players are going to be high quality players who are going to be leaders on the pitch. Not necessarily captains in the team, but good personalities to have around the place, leaders on the pitch. But I find this is a really useful filter for many reasons. Two of the reasons I've just given being a couple of them, but just very useful in that. I also have my top 50 world leagues with WPs. So playing in the UK, Obviously, we've got the work permit situation, and wherever you're playing, you might have various different work permits as well. So this is the top 50 leagues in the game. So this is the top 40 selectable leagues in Europe. And then I've also included the biggest leagues in North America, South America, and I've also included the Australian League, and then League 2 and the Scottish Championship. So I'm playing in Britain at the minute, so I wanted to keep those in there, the Scottish Championship and the League 2, that is, to see if there's any players that that are overperforming in those leagues. Now, the reason I've made this list is because, like I was saying earlier, when you're going through stats, again, let's just use this goal scoring to XG thing again. So there's not going to be many because it's just at the start of the season, but well, for most of the world anyway. There's, when you pull up stats like this, it'll pull up any available stats for any league and any player, including non-league that you might not, that your scouts might know that have stats available to them, any leagues playing at really, really low levels, all that kind of stuff. So you spend half your time weeding through players who will just never be good enough for the level that you're playing because they're overperforming in a league that is light years away from the level you're playing at. With this, with the top 50 leagues, you at least know they're playing at a good level of professional football. So you can use these stats a little bit more kind of usefully. You know that this John Velasquez, he's 27 years old, he's at Independiente, he's got 10 goals from 10 XG, so he's a fairly clinical forward in 30 games. He's actually a midfielder, shows he's a good goal-scoring midfielder. It seems my scouts already know about him anyway. But you can bet your bottom dollar that if you want someone to be getting goals from that number 10 position, he's going to be the kind of player that you want to look at. Same as we've got a striker here, Hayden Palacios. Winger, sorry. Hayden Palacios. 9 goals from 5 XG. It's in 30 games, but maybe this guy is a prime candidate for being a goal-scoring winger in your system. Maybe you want to bring someone in who can be retrained as a striker. He's showing that he's good in front of goal. Give him a scout. Maybe get him in on trial. He's showing that he could be a good bit of business. But it's just for that kind of thing. There's obviously a multitude of ways that you can use all of these stats to look for the kinds of players that you're after. But to weed out the non-league and the really low-level players, this filter just works really well. That's what it's there for. So if you want to use that, if you're doing a Moneyball save, or even if you're just sick of clicking through top goal scorers from the Vanarama North because you're playing in the Premier League, then this is the one for you. So there we go, guys. Bit of a longer video today. Sorry if it's been a bit of a bore for you, but those are the views. That's how you install them. That's how I use them. If you've got any other questions, please just drop them down in the comments or drop into a stream, twitch.tv/VikingDan. I'm live most days at 2 PM. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have. And as always, if you've enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy what I'm doing, give me a subscribe, and I'll see you next time.